All right. Hi. Good evening, everyone. Okay. I'm just gonna open up my laptop. Hold on. Okay. Can we get the slides up? Okay. Let's see whether this works. Okay. I'm just going to introduce a little bit of background of where I come from. So I work in an organization called Oasis Place. What we do is that we focus on supporting individuals with learning differences or neurodevelopmental disorders. Like Swiss mentioned just now, people with autism, ADHD, learning difficulties. These are all called neurodevelopmental disorders. And what we do is that we do assessments or diagnosis. We provide therapeutic services as well, support them with any areas of difficulties that they might have. And we do this in various settings. So we work, of course, in our center, which is not far from here. It's just in Brickfields. We also go offsite. So sometimes we go to schools, we go to homes, we go to the workplace or offices as well. And of course, because of the last 2 years, we've been online a lot as well. And what we are known as we are known as a multidisciplinary intervention center. We're Malaysia's largest multidisciplinary intervention center. Basically, what that means is that we have different disciplines under one roof. We have the psychology team or the psychology services. So myself is one of them. We have occupational therapists in the house as well, speech and language therapists. We have a visiting music therapist. And what we do is that we do conduct events and workshops and talks such as this, trainings. And the big goal or the heart of what we hope to do is that we want our individuals that we work with to be able to have the best quality of life. Yeah, and so we try to support them throughout the transitions of life. A lot of times when you hear people talking about neurodevelopmental disorders like autism and things like that, what comes to mind is working with children. Yeah, but what we realize is that we need to support them throughout their life. They're not just going to be children forever. Yeah, so from children, they will go on to become teenagers, right? And then young adults and then working adults as well. So the key is trying to support them through these different transitions that they will go throughout their life. Yeah. I just want to highlight our website. So for those of you who are interested, you can check out our website. We do have a page where you can select or look for resources as an employer who is interested in maybe hiring people, the neurodiverse population. We do have resources on our website. We do try to update that regularly to support this area as well. Of course, as you can see, there are different things that you can see on the website, whether you are somebody who is autistic or is learning different, whether you're a parent, a teacher, you can go to the website and look for different resources available there. Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to start off to introduce what neurodiversity means, or what does it mean to be in the neurodiverse communities. Who is familiar with this term? No, no, a lot of heads shaking. Okay. So basically, the neurodiverse, the neurodiverse is this. Yeah, hold on. I'm just gonna go on to my next slide. This is a term coined by this lady called Judy Singer. Yeah, and neurodiversity. So how she coined it is that neurodiversity is the reality that every single living individual or living being is unique. Yeah, and that our minds are all different from one to another. Our brains are all wired differently. Yeah. And why the term here is neuro is because it's the brain. Right? We are very familiar with physical disability, right? Because that's usually disabilities that you can see, right? But neurodiversity or neurodisabilities are typically things that you may not be able to see. Yeah, you may be able to observe some of the behaviors or the characteristics, but it's not easily observable. Yeah. And that's why sometimes people even term these neurodiversity as hidden disabilities. Yes, you may not know somebody has ADHD. You may not know somebody has dyslexia or even autism. Yeah, so that's what I mean by hidden disabilities. Yeah, and this is basically what she's trying to highlight with the term is that neurodiversity is a natural variation of the human brain, right? So all our brains here, all of us here, all our brains are wired differently. And so these individuals also, their brains are wired differently, which sometimes maybe gives them some challenges or difficulties in the world that we live in. Yeah, maybe extra or additional difficulties from what we might occur. Yeah. I've got this video over here. I don't, if Aaron, you could help me to just play the video. Catered to talking about neurodiversity in the workplace. Yeah, I'll just show this video, and then after that, I'll go into a little bit more specific of some of the more common neurodiverse conditions. Yeah. Might, if you try clicking on the video and see if you can get it to play. Yeah. Yeah, so as you can see, this video is a video that's prepared by Deloitte. And the key here is that we're trying to get people to realize and highlight that people who are neurodiverse, they have their advantages in the workplace as well. Like I mentioned just now, a lot of times emphasis is placed on the early stage of life, childhood, getting through school, education, how that looks like. But then a lot of times it's forgotten what happens when they grow up. Yeah, and of course, to be to have meaningful life is to have an occupation, right? To have a job, to have the ability to earn yourself a living as well. And of course, a lot of times for parents or caregivers, this is a big fear, right? Because they are getting older. How long are they going to be able to support this individual if they are not able to get into the workplace and be able to fend and earn a living for themselves? So that's why this topic is quite special to us, whereby we're trying to get people to realize the ability and the opportunities that are available for these individuals who are neurodiverse to get into the workplace, to get into the workforce. Yeah. So just now in the video, you might have seen some terms that maybe is a bit more familiar, such as autism, ADHD, dyslexia. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about some of these main conditions. So ADHD, I'll brief you a little bit about what that means, as well as autism, as well as dyslexia. Again, neurodiversity covers many, many things. So as you saw in the video, there's dyspraxia, there's Tourette syndrome. There are many others as well. But some of the more commonly known ones are maybe this, and that's why I'm just going to briefly cover them. So first up, I think the thing is not changing, so maybe you can help me out, Aaron. Okay, so first up, ADHD. Yeah, so basically ADHD is attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Basically the 2 or 3 categories of ADHD, one being the inattentive type. If you can see the first column, the first column is the inattentive type, whereby people who are easily distracted, they tend to daydream, they are unorganized, they have difficulty paying attention for a long period of time. The second or the middle column that you see is hyperactivity or impulsivity. So, these are the ones who have difficulty sitting still, they're very impulsive, they rush through things, they make rash decisions, they don't think thoroughly. And the final one is combined. So you can have both presentations of ADHD. The first column where it says inattentive, the term that some people might use or you might have heard of is ADD. Yeah, so you cannot really pay attention or you have difficulty paying attention. So just looking at these things, of course, you would be able to realize where they might struggle in the workplace. Yeah, so they might have challenges and they will have difficulties, if they are disorganized, if they can't focus for longer periods of time, if they can't stay seated, if they just rush through their tasks without being more thorough. There are, of course, challenges that can present itself in the workplace. Yeah. Besides that, there is autism spectrum disorder. So when we talk about autism, mainly there are 2 behavioral difficulties that you will see. One is that they have social interaction and communication deficits, so they're not very good socially. Yeah. And what does that mean? That means they have difficulty with communication or interacting with other people. The very common thing that you will hear is people with autism, they can't give you eye contact. That's the very common thing, but that's not the end all and be all, right? It's more than that when we say social difficulties, but that's just an example. They tend to have difficulty making and keeping friends. So the way they socialize, the way they understand things around them is a little bit different. Yeah, so that's why it might be a challenge. Again, thinking about most of our workplaces, it's a very social setting, isn't it? You work in teams, you work with other people, you have to be able to relate with your managers and your co-workers as well. So challenges there as well. And another area that they tend to have difficulty with is that they tend to have either stereotyped or repetitive behavior or sensory interest. And basically what that means is that they can be very rigid. They don't like changes, sudden changes in their routine. If I'm supposed to do this at this time, if you suddenly change something, they'll get thrown off. They might have some stereotyped or repetitive behaviors, whether that is the way they pace, the way they do things. They might need to repeat a certain behavior and over a few times. Some people might say this is very similar to having OCD. If you've heard of somebody who has OCD who might need to repeat certain movements or do certain things, this is the same thing as well. They tend to have extreme focus on specific topics, so they have certain areas of interest where they're very good at. So you have people with autism who know very much about trains, who knows about cars. They can tell you all the information, what year this model is made, when it was discontinued. They can tell you all these kind of facts. Yeah, so they have that kind of very specific and special interest. And the final thing just now is hypersensitivity. So their sensations or the way they perceive their senses around them is a little bit more heightened. So noises might get to them a little bit more. They might be not very comfortable wearing certain type of materials of clothes. So what I say, that's what I mean by hypersensitive. Yeah, so those are some examples of the challenges that the individual with autism would face. Generally, when we talk about the autism spectrum, I want to highlight this because the term spectrum just basically means that it's very wide. Yeah. The saying that we use is that if you've met one person with autism, you've only met one person, they're all different from one to another. That's why it's termed the spectrum. And generally, we look at it as in different levels. By level 1 is that they require some support, not too significant. And as they go up level 2 and level 3, they require a little bit more support. Yeah. And, for example, when we say somebody who has difficulty maintaining eye contact with you, that's an example of, having some difficulty socialization. But some of the autistic individuals have no issues giving you eye contact, but they might have more difficulty interpreting what you say. understanding what you mean in a social thing, understanding how to start a conversation with you. So they might have other more specific difficulties when, sometimes sometimes people say they have difficulty also understanding sarcasm, understanding humor. Yeah, so things like that. And final one, I think the one that is also quite common is dyslexia, whereby you have a learning challenge, as also known as having a deep impairment in reading. Yeah. So when they talk about people who have dyslexia, they say when they read, the words move, the words jump, or the alphabet seem to be moving on the page. So it makes it difficult for them to actually read. Yeah. Especially longer pieces of words, yeah, or longer bodies of work. Yeah. And they tend to make spelling errors as well. Yeah, so not very good at spelling, not very good at reading, not very good at spelling. Yeah. As you can see, the common thing that they talk about also is reversing their letters. Yeah, so they read the B as the D. They tend to confuse B and Ds. They might confuse P and Qs. Those that can be kind of mirror images. Yeah, and of course that makes it very difficult to understand something that you're trying to read. And these challenges obviously come out a lot in school, right? I mean, talking about all whether it's ADHD, whether it's autism, whether it's dyslexia, we do see a lot of these challenges in school, and that's probably where it might start being recognized, right? So if you have difficulty studying, difficulty with your academics, you have difficulty making friends with your peers, right? You have difficulty paying attention or staying seated in class. So this is when the difficulties usually come out, sometimes even in kindergarten, for those that maybe the presentation or the difficulties are more severe, they tend to get noticed or recognized younger. And as they get older, typically we try to support them across the ages. And when we go into the workplace, it's a different level of support, right? But why? So I want to highlight why, right? So why are we talking about neurodiversity in the workplace? So I just highlighted just now their difficulties, their challenges. But on the flip side, on the other hand, they have advantages as well. So they do bring certain specific skills or a different set of abilities. So as we said at the start of the session, basically neurodiversity means that the brain is wired differently. So the way they think is a little bit different. So they might be a bit more creative. They might have different way of solving problems. They might have different angles at looking at a certain situation. So there are different things that we want to try to be able to tap into. And just for statistics sake, as you can see over here, very, very few percentage of these individuals are working. Now, this is from the UK, talking about individuals with autism. Yeah, only 32% of autistic adults are in work. Yeah, so and it's not because they don't want to get a job, but they cannot, or they have a difficulty getting the job. Yeah. Actually, it's even worse now. It's gone down to 22%. Yeah, so this is worse than they think it is. Yeah. So of course, like I mentioned just now, it's 77% of them, when you survey, we talk to them, they all want to find a job. Or they want to be able to work. They want to be able to earn some living, but they just cannot. They have difficulty finding the job. Yeah. But the hope is that there are many companies now which are starting to become more aware and starting to hire as well. Yeah, these are a list of them. And I've got a video later, quite a nice video to watch, but I just want to highlight a few things. So for example, autism. So we talked about the difficulties just now, but these are the positives. I really want to stress, or I really want to highlight the positives. So they have very strong attention to details. They're very methodical. They have a strong, deep focus. Yeah, so we said just now, right? They like something, they really go into depth into it. So they really have that ability to focus very strong on things. They have a different sense of creativity, the way they look at things, expertise. They're very good at having a different way of processing information, or they have a unique thought process. they have a strong sense of integrity. Yeah, so they're very honest and they're very loyal. And just now, I mentioned about some of them having difficulties with adapting to changes, but they are also very good at routine work. So, if you give them a set of work, what they need to do, and they know the expectation, and it's not going to have too many changes and difficulties thrown at them, they're actually very good at just keep going and doing and getting the job done. Yeah. So this is kind of when we talk about this and we highlight the positives here, we're trying to get a paradigm shift. Yeah. Instead of focusing on the difficulties or the disabilities that they have, we want to focus on what they can bring, to the situation or to the workplace or to the environment that they're in. Yeah. So the company I wanted to highlight, or the video I have, is about Microsoft. So they actually started a neurodiversity hiring program. Yeah, they wanted to tap because they realized that there's a lot of talent out there that is not being accessed. Yeah, or the talent is being wasted. Right? They have these abilities and they have these skills, but because they are a little bit different, because they have certain difficulties, so they're unable to get a job. So Microsoft was quite specific in trying to highlight this program or get this going. And we'll just see this little video that we have over here.
When I was diagnosed with autism, the psychologist explained it like there were very limited career capacity for me.
Before I came to Microsoft, I was struggling to get employment, and I had these skills in math, but nobody was giving me interviews, and it didn't seem to be going well. I worked a couple of minimum wage jobs. It was work, it paid the bills, but I definitely could feel that I was destined for something more.
I feel like I get to have a pretty significant impact on Microsoft.
By having people with disabilities in the fabric of our company, you're building in a diverse workforce that then represents the 1 billion people with disabilities out there. We're going to be building better products, we're going to be building better services, websites, anything that we do will work across the spectrum of being human.
And so every time we get an opportunity to bring somebody in who can see things from a different angle, every time that happens, that's where we find these great creative types who can come in and help us deliver the things that we care about.
I'm Cody Takiyoshi, and I'm a software engineer at Xbox Live.
My name is Joey Chemis, and I'm a data scientist here at Microsoft.
MJ Gardner, software engineer on Azure build pipelines and engineering systems.
There is just an incredibly high unemployment and underemployment rate when it comes to autism. Our traditional hiring process, that's not going to allow someone with autism to show up and show their strengths.
For me, the autism hiring program was the chance to finally, make it. You're saying, here's the things that come with autism that the standard interview process would flag. Here's how we accommodate those issues and make them less of an issue. And here's how we allow the person to really shine and show their true colors and abilities.
I think this is just a better way of evaluating. This is just probably a better way for anyone.
People are looking for companies that reflect humanity. There is incredible talent out there in the marketplace that should be in our company.
This program has given me a mirror to reflect on the things that make me different, or how could I maybe change the way that I work in order to bring some of these experiences forward.
My hope for the future is that we won't see this as a program, but instead a natural way to recruit key talent in our organizations.
So if I was talking to a younger version of myself, I would let myself know that you're gonna do really cool things and that you're gonna major in math, you're gonna really love it, and that you're gonna end up getting a really cool job at Microsoft that you just enjoy. The people, the work, the type of problems that are being solved.
So to be here is just really cool. I'm very proud of where I am.
So I wanted to share that because I think it highlights what initiatives people are doing, and then the possibilities there as well. Okay, when we talk about, again, neurodiversity in the workplace, there are benefits to both parties. Yeah, so the benefits to the company, and then of course there are benefits to the neurodiverse individual, the employees. Yeah. Basically, what we want to be able to create is a win-win situation, right? So it's a win for the company. They get the talent, or they get somebody who's able to support what they're trying to do. And for the neurodiverse individual, they are able to get a job. Yeah. How does it help the company, right? So they get to capitalize on these talents, these untapped talents. Yeah. It's greater productivity for them. They get more innovative and creative perspective. Like we said just now, these individuals think differently. They might think outside the box. Yeah. And of course, managers in the company, you develop greater sensitivity to working with different kind of people. Yeah. So different kind of talents or different kinds of staff. Yeah. For the individual itself or for the employee, right? This brings greater self-esteem, right? So their ability to get a job and a living. It increases the awareness of neurodiversity. So that's also what we try to do. And that's example with giving this talk here is to increase that awareness. Yeah. Positively improves the company's morale and culture. Yeah, being inclusive, accepting people, and also trying to, and also it also increases their sense of pride to be able to be part of an inclusive workplace. Yeah, for many of us, right, this is not something that we think about or we struggle with or we have difficulty, right? A lot of times it's okay, I got a few job interviews, I got a few job offers, and picking picking the right one or the one that I like the best. For a lot of times for these individuals, it's I don't even have an option. I don't even have a choice. And we want to try to be able to highlight or shout out that, hey, actually there's many possibilities. Yeah. What the how-tos, yeah, or how can each and every one of us, be supportive in the workplace, yeah, for individuals who might be neurodiverse. So I put a few things down. I put a few thoughts down, or some ways that that people can support. Yeah, I think sometimes the thought is that is it going to be too much work to include these people, right? Are we going to have to spend a lot of money? Are we going to spend a lot of time? Is it going to be too much of a hassle, right? The reward versus the cost, right? But I think there's certain things that can be done, which is not that much of a hassle, yeah, if we know what we're doing, yeah. So some simple supporting strategies. A big one is an adjustment to the hiring process. Yeah, so we talked about it just now that many of these individuals might have difficulty with their social skills or their soft skills, right? And that's a big part of the interview process, isn't it, right? You need to be able to have that conversation, that back and forth, form an impression, which many of these individuals may not be very good at doing. Yeah, because in the first place, socializing or talking to somebody new or somebody different is so stressful for them. Yeah. So adjustment to the hiring process, sensory accommodation. So we mentioned just now, some of these individuals have heightened or hypersensitivity, right? How can we accommodate the workplace environment to be more conducive for their senses? Yeah. Flexibility and adaptability. And then the last part, a buddy or mentor system, which is the social aspect of working in an organization. So adjustment to the hiring process, yeah. It's simple steps, right? Certain things that we might be expected for other individuals. So a lot of times we know what to expect in an interview, but for many others, for maybe the neurodiverse population, they might not be very clear of what it entails, what they need to do, how should they prepare, right? So communicating the expectations of the interview process in advance, very clear what it entails, what we're going to do, what kind of questions you might be asked, how you're expected to dress up. That kind of thing we all know, right? Like you know, okay, if I'm going for an interview, I got to dress up formally in my best clothes, make sure everything is nice. But for them, they might not realize it, right? So expectations again. So again, it's things that we may not think of, but making things very clear, explicit, and concrete. Yeah. So besides just looking at the resume, right? So consider other ways to assess their skill set, right? So whether this is a work trial, whether it's getting them to do a short test maybe, or to do a little, we're going to call it an internship for a period of time to see their actual skills, right? And instead of just judging them based on a piece of paper and how they come across when you meet them. Yeah. And of course, adjust your communication style. Yeah. So, things like I mentioned just now, they might not be able to understand when you use big words or the way you talk differently, or what exactly you might be saying. So you want to be able to be as direct as possible in your language or in your communication. Yeah. Other things to think about in a interview, right? So we want to make sure it's a quiet space, right? So again, we talk about the sensory part, the stress levels. Be clear of how long it's going to take, right? Who's going to be in the room, what exactly the activities are. Yeah, so again, being very clear of all the little details that sometimes we may not include, because to other people might not be so we might not be so bothered about it. Yeah, but for these individuals, it is extra stressful, right? If they go into a room expecting to be one-on-one with the interviewer and there's 2 interviewers, stress level goes up the roof, right? For us, we might be more stressed, but we take it in our stride, right? So simple things like that. The sensory accommodation part, again, thinking about simple things whereby making sure that the place is clean, which of course now COVID is already being done. Special working environments whereby it's more quiet. Some people are allowed to use noise cancelling headphones. So in the office, so that it's not too noisy. They have separate quiet rooms or quiet spaces as well. Things to think about is also smells, right? So sometimes, you have all these air purifiers and things like that, which is very strong. People like it, but for people who are hypersensitive, might be too much, right? I know for me, I sneeze a lot when you get all this aroma therapy stuff. But yeah, so again, these are simple things to think about that. For us, and sometimes we find our ways to accommodate and adjust to it, but somebody who might be hypersensitive or have extra heightened senses to some of these things, it's a little bit harder for them to adjust or to be able to accommodate as well. Flexibility and adaptability. Of course, I think this is quite a big thing in the current work environment. With working from home, and COVID has brought along that, right? The pandemic. But yeah, so how can we be a little bit more flexible or adaptable in their working arrangement and working hours? Are they allowed to work remotely for some of the time and then come into the office for some of the time? Maybe minimize the social fear aspect that might come into play. Their timing as well, right? So for some of them who take public transport, it might be quite overwhelming, right? So you have to take the train, crowded with lots of people. So for example, maybe just adjusting the work time slightly will mean that you can kind of miss the rush hour, right? And take a more quieter commute to the office. So simple things like that can be quite effective. I know an individual who, an individual on the autism spectrum who used to take the train 1 hour to work every day, back and forth. Yeah, so 1 hour to work and 1 hour back from work. So they are very committed, right? And because it was part of his routine and that was part of his job, he was very happy to do it. Even though it's 1 hour, we may not be too happy to do that, but he did it. Interesting. I have a video of him later, so we will get to that. A buddy system, and I think this is also a very important thing. Some of you might be familiar already of this being in the workplace as well, but being more intentional about having somebody paired up with this individual who is neurodiverse, to just check in, making sure you're doing okay. How are you adapting? What are you struggling with? Is there any support they might need? And the buddy system is very different from a supervisor, right? Because a buddy is more like a peer. There is a less stress, right? If your boss or your supervisor comes and check in, you might not want to say certain things, right? But if it's a peer, if it's a buddy, you feel a little bit more relaxed also. Yeah, so clarifying work tasks, providing support if they need, the social aspect as well, right? So helping them understand what's happening, maybe getting them to sit together or go and makan together for lunch. Things like that, right? So that social aspect, I think, is very important. And like I was saying just now, this is quite an interesting thing to look at. This is the adjustments that people that they've done in Australia. yeah, in the workplace to support autism in Australia. Hold on. So this is what you can see. So that some of them have had a quiet room or sensory adjustments, flexible hours, training for the colleagues to understand, right? So awareness and understanding to be able to adapt to working with somebody who is slightly different, having a support person there, changing their or fixing their work routine. And you can see a big chunk there actually is no changes. Yeah, so no significant changes. So just like I mentioned, people sometimes have that misconception that it's going to be a big hassle, right? But actually, as you can see over here, this is a survey done in Australia. A big part of it, they didn't make many changes actually, right? So it's just some accommodation, some adjustments, and simple things that they have done to be able to support them in the workplace. Yeah, so again, you know, it's a similar survey as well, looking at hiring employees with autism. As you can see, they highlighted some areas, I guess, of difficulties, whereby some of them said that they might need a bit more supervision that increases some of the workload, of course. Whether there is some miscommunication, which, to be honest, with all of us, it happens as well, right? Lack of training, right? So some of the employees or the rest of the staff may not understand their new neurodiverse colleagues that well. So that's something to think about as well. But these were some of the results of a survey that they did. Yeah. But besides that, as you can see, the top few areas, there were increased awareness, there were positive adjustments to the work culture, there were new creative and different skills added, there was improvement in morale as well, right? So people see that, hey, you know, hey, we're being a more inclusive environment. So these things was seen as well. Yeah. I have a video after this, but I just want to highlight, you know, my main point or my main message here is to be able to help spread the awareness of what neurodiversity is, what these challenges are, and what they can bring to the workplace. And that it actually isn't that challenging, if you think about it, as to what is needed to support them in the work environment. So I have one last video, like I mentioned just now. So this is a Malaysian one. So again, all our videos just now was more, you know, American or based overseas. This is an actual Malaysian individual who I'm familiar with and I've worked with, and him sharing his story.
My name is Joshua Teo. I work in UNIQLO for 3 years. I do unpack and sanitize the clothes, and I serve customer at fitting room. I like to work at UNIQLO because I want to get more income, and the people here are very nice.
One of the most outstanding qualities would be he is very efficient. And then because I believe he can actually replenish faster and better than some of the other staff. And he's very capable. And he will make sure that if I give him a target like 8 to 10 blue thoughts within the end of the day and give him a very specific time, he would meet those times. And if he cannot, and he will just reply to me like, oh, sorry, baby, I cannot finish. Can I have another 30 minutes? I would say he's very responsible because he'll make sure he complete all his tasks before he go back. And he'll make sure he report to all his PIC and make sure that if he cannot finish, he'll report. So I would say efficient, capable, observant, and responsible. Yeah, those are his 3 outstanding qualities.
I can do it, so can my friends.
Yeah, so this is the young man that I have the pleasure of knowing and working with, and he's been at UNIQLO. He's at 3 years. I think this was probably done a few years ago, so about 4 to 5 years now. And he was previously located in the KLIA branch, so that's where the 1 hour commute every day is. He's thankfully now he's been able to transfer to an outlet nearer his home, so his commute is much easier. But I think it's very inspiring to see. When they're able to harness his abilities, his talents, find the right fit, right, and put him into the right environment for him to succeed. And then you can see that, like I said, it's a win-win, right? So it's a win for the company and the organization. It's a win for him as well. Yeah, so hopefully this is something for you guys to think about, and for where you guys are in your workplace and your different environments, how you can support the neurodiverse population. Thank you.